Welcome to A View from the Summit, where we explore the unique relationships between animals and humans, whether it's an Olympic partner or couch buddy, a working companion or unique pet, a world champion or someone you think the world of. Join us for a look at animals in our lives. Brought to you by Summit Animal Health. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of View from the Summit. You know, all of my life, I have been referred to as bird brain. But you know, with today's show, I think that could be more of a compliment than I might have realized. But before I get to introduce our guest, I get to introduce my co-host and good friend, the original and the true woman of the prairie, Robin Benson.
Thanks, Steve. I love it. Well, glad to be here. It's always so much fun. And before I forget, happy early birthday, Steve.
Well,
Wanted
thank
to say
you very
that.
much.
So we
I
can
am
all
accepting
celebrate.
gifts all day today and tomorrow. Just want to throw that out there.
Right. Prolonging the gift giving window. But thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here. Just a little bit about my background. My husband, daughter, and I run a working cattle ranch up here in northwestern Minnesota, and we work our cattle with horses. It's a grass-fed beef operation, and my daughter is homeschooled. She's a feral animal on the place, loves it. She loves the life, and animals are fully everyday part of our life. It's calving season right now, so lots of extra animals hitting the ground every day. And this podcast is near and dear to my heart as well, because animals have impacted our lives in ways that are super hard to explain. But what we found is there are people all over the world that have the same experience. And so what's so fun about it is sharing the unique and sometimes a little bit different stories that come across our path. And what it always comes back to is how these animals have touched our lives, especially starting at a young age. A lot of times people longed for it or had a connection that they rediscovered, or somehow are able to translate their passion and connection with animals into making an impact to help others. And the animals are almost a catalyst or a vehicle to help with that. And so, Steve, I know we've talked all around Dion. It feels kind of funny, but she's got her buddies with her today. Steve, introduce our guest. It's so much fun to have you here.
I get to introduce Dion. Dion is in San Francisco, and she has pigeons on her shoulder. She actually is part of an organization, and what is it? Pigeon.
It's called
Palomacy.
Palomacy, and
Dang
it's
it.
like it's a portmanteau of the word in Spanish for pigeon or dove, which is paloma, and the word diplomacy, which we all know what is. So it's diplomacy for pigeons.
Because pigeons have had a bad rap. And so we love stories, Dion. So tell us how you got involved with, well, how you came to have a pigeon on each shoulder.
But before that, I want to know about the cat that's peeking up in the bottom screen,
Kiki.
who is very curious about those birds on your shoulder. Because I know my cat would be very curious also.
So we also have 3 cats that live in the apartment with the pigeons, and that sounds crazy, but I swear they manage to coexist, and the cats are more annoyed with the pigeons than anything. That it's not as much of a predatory thing. It's more of a, why does this guy live in my house? Why does this guy come and stand next to me? The pigeons kind of frenetic energy when they're preening or something. The cats are like, God, I'm just trying to relax. And that drives them bonkers, but they coexist.
I just saw the cat looking up like,
Uh-huh.
So sorry to interrupt. Back to the story.
How did you come to have 2 pigeons or 1 pigeon now on your shoulder?
No, 1 pigeon.
You went out for a loaf of bread, you came back, you had pigeons on your shoulder. What?
I mean, essentially, yes. It was I've always cared a lot about animals. And I would have told you I wanted to work with them and help them, but I didn't really know how. when COVID happened, as you remember, everyone was kind of staying home and we were going for all these weird little walks. It's like walks around the city. It's the only thing we can do. And one of those walks we found, it's me and my husband and my son Atlas. We found a pigeon who was obviously just sitting on the sidewalk being weird. And it was like, does this guy need help? And you could just pick him up, which is a red flag for a bird, especially a prey animal. So we took him home and put him in a little box, and I started calling around. I got on Facebook and joined the Palomacy help group, which I am now a moderator of. And everyone advised me where to take the pigeon and what to do. And we ended up going to a wildlife center across the Golden Gate Bridge called Wild Care in San Rafael, which is actually now where I work. So this one pigeon got me into pigeon rescue with Palomacy, and it also pushed me toward this new career in wildlife rehab. So it was we called him Pete the Pigeon, and it definitely changed my life. I don't even know if it's for the better, but it changed my life.
So Pete the Pigeon, that is so cool. And so what were you doing before, just to give us an idea, what were you doing before you got involved with pigeons and COVID? I mean, COVID changed a lot of people's worlds, but
Yeah.
sounds like you changed an entire trajectory of your career and everything.
I was a bartender for like 15 years before COVID happened, essentially. And so was my husband. We were both bartenders. And it's like, good, easy money. We can travel a lot. We moved to a lot of different places. We kind of got stuck in this apartment when housing prices went up a lot, and we've got rent control. So it's like, we're not gonna move all over the place anymore like we used to. And then in like March 2020, when, all the bars closed down, it was like, wow, this is a really fickle industry. Everything's closed and there's nowhere to work, and changing careers made sense then. But I couldn't have imagined working in a wildlife hospital compared to working in, bars at night. It's a completely different. And I work in Marin County, which isn't even in San Francisco. So it's like a whole nother environment, physically and in every other way too.
Well, I want to hear a story, a funny story about living with pigeons. Tell me one.
Oh my God. No, I can't. I don't know. Um, we actually homeschooled our son for a long time, until this year actually. And we didn't like the school he got into, so we're interviewing with a kind of a schmancy private school up here in like the Cathedral. It's very posh. And the fancy schmancy private school lady, interviewing us on Zoom first. That was the time when my freaking pigeons decided to come, and they're like zooming back and forth. Pickles came and stood right behind me right here and just looked at the camera the entire time. Like, they're just pigeons going back and forth, and this woman's very professional and she's like pretending nothing is happening. And it was like, we can talk about the elephant in the room, the pigeon in the room. Don't worry. They're supposed to be here. Similarly, once in a while I'll take Pickles out, like to go to sit outdoors somewhere. And it was a couple months ago, we were at a little outdoor Italian cafe with like the patio seating, and I had Pickles on my shoulder, and a woman looked over and she goes, "Oh my God, there's a pigeon on you." And she's like, "Did you know that?" And she was dead serious. I wanted to be like, "Ma'am, he is wearing an outfit. Like, yes, I know he's on me." Like,
That's funny.
That is funny. So Pickles just sits on your shoulder, like you have a little leash, or do they just hang
Pickles,
out?
come here. So here's Pickles. He's wearing pigeon pants. They're like, it's like little overalls with it even has a goofy little pocket in the front.
Oh.
And it catches the poop underneath, and it has a little ring for a leash. So we actually take him camping with us. And the reason for that is not just because we're weird. He doesn't know how to eat on his own. So going camping for 2 nights, I could leave him home, but he wouldn't be able to eat anything. Uh, he's a
Wow.
very special pigeon. And that's the main reason he's a special pigeon, but not the only reason. And so he's a pretty well-traveled little guy. He does great in hotel rooms and in a tent in the woods. Um, he does
Okay,
get car sick though.
he doesn't know how to eat or whatever, but how intelligent are these birds, Jan?
Um, Scientists have done a lot of because they've actually but they're kind of like used as like lab rats for research a lot, and pigeons are more intelligent than they get credit for. They've used them to help diagnose cancer in like medical slides, and from up above they've been able to find people stranded in water. They're really amazing little guys. Their intelligence isn't it's not like far reaching, but it's very in specific ways. They're intelligent in very specific ways. And I think one of the reasons people think that they are not intelligent is because when you see them on the city streets, they're almost always starving, and they're basically just struggling all the time. And you throw a crust of bread and they all go bonkers, and they look dumb, they look desperate, and they're not able to really express their intelligence in a way that people can understand when they're having such a hard time out there, which is what they're usually doing.
Hmm.
But Pickles is not a good example of an intelligent pigeon, and that is okay.
Well, is Pew an example of an intelligent pigeon?
She's my new one, so I don't know her super well yet, but she is blind. Which is why we named her Pew. There's a character in Treasure Island called Blind Pew, and I love that book. But she does seem intelligent because she has figured out so much, and we've had her for just a couple weeks actually, and I made her crate so that she can feel things with her feet, and she knows where her food is and where her water is, and she knows where the couch is, and she's kind of got the idea where everything is and who's safe and she knows who I am versus who other people are, and um she's a clever little bird. I'm kind of impressed with her.
So okay, you go out for a loaf of bread 3 years ago, and you come back with a pigeon on your shoulder. Your husband, he said, "Oh, what's new?" Or
So
sail
he
on.
actually he was with me and he carried the pigeon home, and I have managed to rope him into this as well. Like so I'm on Palomacy's help group on Facebook, and I am one of the people that runs our hotline as well. So on my cell phone, I'm getting texts and calls from all over the place all the time about pigeons in distress of all kinds. And so, someone will text and say, "Oh, there's a pigeon at, Third and Market that is struggling or whatever," and I'll text him and say, "Can you go get this pigeon?" Or, "Can someone bring a pigeon to you right now?" Because he's working from home. And he has helped me transport many, many pigeons to many, many different rescue situations. And so he's all in too. He's just he's not as all in as I am, but he's all in.
I
So
love it.
So why should we care about pigeons? I mean, for many people, they are like vermin on the streets or in the yard. Why should we care?
Pigeons have been companions to humans longer than most other domesticated animals that we think of. And people don't think of them as domesticated, but they actually are. Um, there are wild living pigeons that are like native pigeons that live in the woods, but that's not what people are talking about when you say pigeon. Most people haven't even ever seen them. In the United States, we have band-tailed pigeons. Over in the UK, they have wood pigeons. They're pretty similar, but they live in the woods and they don't hang around in cities and things. So the pigeons we're talking about are birds that were taken from the wild and domesticated thousands and thousands of years ago. At least 5,000 years ago, I think, is the consensus. There's like cuneiform tablets where they talk about having pigeons. Usually it was as a food source, but there was also companionship for many, many years, hundreds of years. They were like a status symbol, like a symbol of opulence and wealth, like beautiful aviaries full of pigeons. You'd have, they'd be something you were really proud of being, having as part of your life. And of course we all know, I think that they helped us in wars, and they're like war hero pigeons. We've used them, and then we kind of just discarded them. And that's why we have feral pigeons now. They are the descendants of all of these pigeons that we wanted to have near us for whatever reason for all that time. And now we're like, ew, why are they here? And the reason they're here is because we're here, and because we put them here and we displaced them from their native habitat. And so they don't have natural food sources like other wild birds do. They don't really have natural nesting sites like other wild birds do. And so they rely on us for safety and shelter and food. And unfortunately, that means like trash and scraps and building nests and eaves and things like that. So we should care about them, because they're like this exploited underdog that's just been kicked to the curb, and we need to, I don't know, like to have a look at that, and like, what does it mean to be human, and what does it mean to take animals and do something with them, and then just act like, oh, it's not my problem anymore now that it's gone away that we didn't expect. And they're the gentlest little guys, and all they want is safety and shelter like anybody else. And they don't carry a bunch of scary diseases. They don't want to be dirty and gross. They're really clean. They hate being dirty and gross. So when you see a greasy little pigeon on the street, they're not like that because they're yucky, dirty animals. They're like that because they have to live in our garbage and our filth that we put there, and we put them there in it, kind of inadvertently, but we did. And we continue to. We continue to treat them as disposable little beings, and it's just not cool. We should show them some respect, and at least be nice to them.
So you started with Pete the Pigeon. You got in touch with Palomacy. You've gotten involved at a much deeper level with the support group on Facebook, the hotline, even shifting into, wildlife preserve or sanctuary or rescue or rehab. I'm not sure exactly how you describe it, but what have you seen happen with other people? Tell us a story about a person or two who you've worked with to connect them with a rescued pigeon, and how it's changed their life. Like, what does it look like when you start working with people who find a pigeon or want a pigeon, or, how does that work? And tell us a story about that.
I have done so many, connections with people and pigeons, because one of the problems we have, Palomacy we don't have like a facility. There's not like a building with people, volunteers and pigeons in it. It's like a network of volunteers. So part of what we kind of need to do, all of us that work within this organization, is to sort of, it's like evangelize people a little bit, because we need more people to help. We need more hands, we need more foster homes, more aviaries, more rescuers. And so that happens a lot. But I worked with a girl at Wild Care. She actually doesn't work there anymore. But it was one of those 5 million texts a month I get that's like, hey, there's a white pigeon at this park. He looks alone. He looks like he's not doing well. He's all fluffed up and sad looking. Like, what do I do? And I said, catch him. That's always the answer. Catch him. People release white pigeons for dove releases for weddings and funerals and things. And that's a lot of the birds that we end up rescuing, because they don't know where to go. They get injured. They can't find food, etc. So this was one of those little dove release pigeons. They're not doves. They're white pigeons. They're bred to be white. And she said, well, maybe I'll keep him. And I said, I will help you out with that. And I coached her through all of that. And then, next thing you know, she's got a pigeon room in her house. And next thing you know, she's adopted another pigeon who's a buddy for this pigeon. And now the pigeons are married. And she's talking about like turning a whole section of her house into like a pigeon indoor aviary. And that's how it goes, people um certain people just, it clicks for them. And I guess I was one of those people, obviously. Similarly, a lady called Wildcare when I very first worked there, and she was kind of far away, but she's like, my sister found this racing pigeon and he needs help and da da da. And eventually it came out that she had been building this ridiculous structure in her yard for like guinea pigs. And it was essentially like an outdoor aviary thing, like a really cool enclosure. And she said, screw the guinea pigs. We're going to put pigeons in here. And now she's got like a dozen pigeons in there, and she's helped me with a bunch of them. So it's hard to pick out like one specific story, because a lot of what I do ends up being like drawing people in and helping them. It's like one of us, helping them become one of us.
So do you feel a little bit, I mean, this isn't really an urban activity, right? I mean, you are working with people primarily in urban or suburban areas, because that's where the higher concentration of pigeons are. And so I have a theory, but I won't get deep into it now. Being a country person who lives way out in the middle of nowhere with a lot of animals and a lot of nature, and that's my world. But I hear all the time from people who I connect with through my social media presence who are in cities or suburban areas who had been in the country or long for a connection. Do you feel like pigeons are a way for people who live in urban environments to connect with nature or fill that void of an animal need or want the connection in a way that they probably couldn't do with even a dog? Maybe their apartment doesn't allow a dog or a horse or a cow,
100%, 100%. I actually, Wildcare, where I work, is pigeon-friendly wildlife rehab. And we have ambassador animals, right? They're like educational animals, like pelicans. We have usually an opossum, a vulture. We have a turkey vulture. But for the longest time, we'd been talking about what if we had ambassador pigeons, and it was kind of like a hot button thing, like, that's weird, pigeons, But we decided to do it recently, and part of my kind of pitch for them was like, this is the perfect, like, for the kids that maybe live in super urban areas and they've never even seen like a raccoon. They're not noticing songbirds in the trees. They're not looking up and looking at the hawks even. It's like pigeons are the wildlife they see. Like that's their connection to wildlife. So being able to kind of connect people with pigeons and say, look at them, look how beautiful they are. Look at their silly behaviors. Like look at them taking a bath in the puddle, or how you can bring them into your home and have them closer to you and appreciate them in that way. It's very much like a urban wildlife, it's like a little connector to the animal world in a place that's kind of, disconnected from them in a lot of ways.
So tell us,
are they emotionally intelligent?
When you asked about intelligence, it's like, it's hard to, because we compare things. It's a very human-centric view of things because we're humans. That's how we see things. It's just our perspective. But and we always think of intelligence as like, oh, can it do tricks? Can it perform for me? Can it do a favor for me? Can it impress me somehow? But I would say pigeons are more emotionally intelligent. They're very, very social. You'll notice they live in big flocks, and it's not just, it's not just a small thing about them. They're very, very social. And even if you have a single pigeon in your house, you're the flock for the pigeon. Like your family is the flock, and they will bond with you. They bond with their mates in such a deep way, and they have this really cool emotional connection. They become obsessed with each other. They become obsessed with you. Pickles sits on my left knee constantly and just looks at me. It's the sweetest thing, but they're very sensitive to, I don't know, to like the vibe in a room, to emotions, to people's just moods and things. And that's more where their intelligence lies, I would say, in my opinion.
So can you tell us an individual experience where you have seen either a family that adopts a pigeon, or you work with a family where they've found a pigeon, maybe they have a kid that or themselves, that all from the emotional intelligence side, I could really see a lot of sort of
Hmm.
profound experiences happening with that. Do you
Hmm.
have an example of one of those? It's just really interesting because,
Yeah.
we do have wood pigeons. We have wild pigeons around here.
Hmm.
Nothing that would survive here if it was not wild, because there's lots of critters that eat it. So they have to know how to survive to be seen. But in this situation, you must have some where they've touched somebody's heart, or they've made a real impact to shift somebody's world. In the last 4 years with the COVID and aftermath, there's been a lot of isolation as one of the sort of symptoms and side effects, and I could see where pigeons really fill that void for people.
Hmm. One of the people I've become connected with is a mom who is an immigrant from the Ukraine who lives just down the hill in Chinatown. And I hope she doesn't mind me talking about her. She has a few kids and they live in a really tiny, tiny space. Like their bathroom is down the hall. It's a shared, it's essentially like a room with four walls. And she's homeschooling her kids in there. And it's small and like dense and intensely urban down in Chinatown. About as dense as you can imagine. And there are also pigeons outside everywhere, but she connected with me as someone who was helping me rescue some of the pigeons in Chinatown. She'd bring them to me, I'd bring them to the hospital. But then she started talking about wanting one, as part of their family. And I got them a pigeon. People always say, "How do you get a pigeon?" It's like you just do. They just show up in your life. But this this little white homing pigeon had been rescued way out in the rural East Bay in the middle of nowhere. His feet were tied together with string. He was terrified of people. And I thought this isn't a really good starter pigeon for somebody. He's like real skittish and really pissed off. He's not had a great life, a great experience with humans, kind of like a traumatized bird, but her she sent me videos and this pigeon sits with her son. He's playing on his iPad or whatever, and the pigeon is preening his face. And they're very isolated in this small apartment as, homeschooled children of like an immigrant family in a place where most everybody is Chinese. And their pet pigeon named Lovey has just become this massive source of joy for them, and they built him like a little church that he goes inside. It's this little hut, and they just have this amazing connection, and it's really helped their family. Like it's almost like it's like the icing on the cake, like the perfect addition to their family, and it's helped them feel more connected to just like life and the world, and um just a source of joy in a time that's kind of dicey for everybody right now, and that's what they do.
And
Tell
this,
us another story. We love stories. We're addicted
yeah.
to stories. Where
Another
pigeons have made a
story.
difference for someone.
I mean, specific story where pigeons have made a difference for someone. Like, God, there are so many.
We've got all day. Don't worry about it.
I'm like, I have to like jog my mind. Um, Pew. She can't see, so she has no idea you guys are here. Um, she's, can you hear?
So
How
do
can
they have to adapt to, while you're thinking of it, sorry, do they have to adjust to the pigeon pants, or do they not mind them, or?
You know, people talk a lot about having them adjust to the pigeon pants, but I have had hundreds of pigeons come through this apartment in the last few years, and I'm not exaggerating. I have put pants on so many of them, and it's never really been an issue. Sometimes at first, there's been a couple pigeons that you put it on and it's like putting a costume on your dog or something. They'll just lay down like I'm dead now. Sometimes they do that at first. They'll just lay down like, or they'll just walk backwards, like when you try to put something cute on a cat or something, they'll just walk backwards. But eventually they kind of just go, okay, well, I guess I wear pants now, and they don't mind it too much.
So how does a pigeon enhance someone's life? I mean, I know a dog. If I get a dog, I come home at the end of the day, the dog is, oh, how are you? I thought you'd never come home. So and so if you have a pigeon, what do you get?
It's a bit like that. I would compare them more to having a pet cat. But that might just be my experience talking. They not all pigeons are the same. They're all really individual. So there are pigeons that don't really want to hang out with you, and they're not excited to see you, and they want to look out the window, and they're more, they're more pigeon centric. But when I come home from work, Pickles hears me at the door and he gets all excited and he starts vibrating and he will fly toward me. And I don't think he sees well. I think it's one of the things that makes him a little wonky, but he'll fly toward me and then land and then fly toward me and then land. He's making a point, like, come hang out with me, come get me. And then when I go sit in my spot on the couch, he comes and sits on my knee and, loafs and looks at me and blinks, and just sitting and watching a pigeon blink and puff up and look at you. It's like, it's not really different than having a cat or a dog sit there gazing at you lovingly. If you know what that experience is like, it's the same thing, except there's something really special about earning the trust of a little prey animal that should be terrified of you. Like we look like predators with our forward facing eyes, and we're big, and we are predators to them, and evolutionarily they're looking at us like, oh, predator. And so when you earn their trust, there's really something wonderful about that. And that's worth something. But I always try to think of, what can I do for them and how can I make their lives better? And that makes me feel good rather than like, what can they do for me? And it ends up, coming back to me tenfold because I'm not really focused on what they can do for me. But it's like when we were camping with Pickles once, the park ranger was like, that's your pigeon? And he goes, well, can he do tricks? I said, no. And he's like, well, what does he do? Like, he just exists. And that's enough, but they're all very, very different. I think when Pickles is sitting there looking at me and blinking, and he just has this little love in his eyes, it really is, it makes my heart explode. And a lot of people have that experience. When
I hear you talking, what is she telling you?
Yeah, well, she's very talkative, and it's different for a pigeon. Like they do their little cooing sound, and the boys are usually a little bit noisier in my experience, but she has this little grunt, this little and I think it's because she's blind. She's more expressive vocally, which is kind of really, really cute to me. And she's also a baby. She's also really, really young. So she has a little bit more of a squeaky vocal thing, but let's see, do you like her pants? There's a little bow tie.
Yeah, cute. Yeah. So pigeons, I mean, animals in general, and a lot of animals that fly, they need space, they need exercise, they need to move. And every area you've talked about, I mean, aviaries and things, but how much demand does a pigeon, exert on a household or a family, or, what does it take to keep a pigeon? Is a little apartment there big enough? How do they exercise, and how do they do that sort of their life, because they fly a lot, right? And
Mhm.
real like out.
One of the coolest things about pigeons as pets, that's probably surprising to most people, is that they are extremely low maintenance. Like more low maintenance than having a cat or something. Um, because when a pigeon is well fed and they've got kind of all their needs met, they don't really have this big desire to go on grand adventures or anything. They're kind of like Elizabeth at Palomacy always says that they're masters of the leisurely arts. And it's absolutely true. When a pigeon is well fed and they've got their safe space and they don't feel like they need to hide or forage or do anything, they don't really want to fly around. Even if you build them a big, beautiful aviary, which is great and more people should do, uh, they find a shelf and go and loaf on it in the sunshine and just look at everything and blink. And that's what they want to be doing more than anything else. They really want to be comfortable and safe and just not be hungry and not be scared. And and then they go and chill somewhere. They sit on the couch like people. They don't really need all this big flying space or a ton of enrichment the way that like really, really like nosy, clever parrots and things like pet birds that you would get at, a pet store or something. They need like a ton of enrichment and interaction and um big, huge cages and things like that. But pigeons kind of need their own little bedroom and they need to know they're part of a family or a flock.
I think I'm a pigeon. No,
You'd be surprised. It's really easy to like kind of level with them because they're like us. It's like, I just want a nice place to sit. I just don't want to be hungry. I don't want to be scared. I'm like, I just want time to myself, like, right? And it's kind of easy to understand them in that way once you get to know them because they are like us.
I think I can
So
learn to coo. I think I'm going to be okay.
Sit on your little place.
Yeah,
Someone
I can sit on my little place, look around, and wait for somebody to feed me.
sit in the sun.
Yeah, I'm a
right.
pigeon.
So tell us from an emotional standpoint, emotional intelligence standpoint, do you have a story or an example of where you saw a pigeon really key into a person, maybe a sickness or maybe a challenge they had, or maybe something that they foretold that happened that you were like, wow, this pigeon was trying to tell me something and this was it kind of thing.
That's a really interesting one. It's like I think a lot of people who live with animals have had this experience with their pets. I know it with cats and dogs, right? And just personally, there there was a time when recently we had an old cat who we had to, have him put down at the vet because he was a million years old and it was his time and no. And so I was just really sad, it is what it is. And Pickles, as ridiculously dumb as he honestly is, he he has enough emotional intelligence that he started behaving very differently when I was really, really sad. And I'm like laying on the couch and, crying and things like that. And, the grief of a lost pet, it makes you act weird. And he noticed I was acting weird and he came and was really concerned about me and would come and sit on top of me and like look in my face. And he thinks he's being helpful. Maybe some people would think it was creepy having a pigeon staring at your face, but he was, like sitting on my forehead and stuff. And it was, out of character for him. He didn't want to just sit near me. He wanted to be on me and looking into my eyes very, very closely and um just putting his face on me and things like that. And it was such a big difference from how he normally behaves that I could tell he was reacting to my emotions. And it's amazing to see. When we first took Pew home, she's, blind and had been in an aviary at the wildlife center for weeks because we put them out in the aviary and it's like, go learn to be a pigeon and then before release, right? but we didn't know she was blind at the time. And it was like, why is this pigeon just sitting in this place acting weird? And she was miserable and losing weight, so scared when I brought her home. And like 24 hours later, she felt comfortable. She wanted to sit and just press her face to my cheek. And she just sat with her forehead against my cheek. Like, and if you don't think that that's an expression of, I don't want to speak for them, but love or gratitude or something emotional that's more than what people would expect from a pigeon. Because, again, when you see them on the street, they're just scrambling for a crust of bread or something, and they look terrible and they're dirty. And when you actually get them to a place where they have the, space to show their emotions and their emotional and social sophistication, it really is there. It really, really is.
That's cool. And so when they mate for life, I mean, they marry like a mate. I've heard that they are affectionate like that with each
Oh
other,
my
right?
gosh. It must be the origin of the, phrase lovey-dovey. They are obsessed with each other. It's kind of like at some point it's like, God, you guys get a room. And because they have kind of a cycle when they're married where they do their egg sitting part, but before the egg sitting part, there's like this honeymoon phase. And that's their favorite part because it's fun. It's like going on dates. I swear. It sounds silly, but I swear I'm like it's not hyperbole. They spend time together just like preening each other's necks, and like they'll sit on top of each other, not like a mating coitus thing. They want to be so close to each other that they'll sit like, so the boy pigeon will stick his whole head under the girl pigeon and just close his eyes, and like he's so happy that he can be so close to her. And they spend all this time just kissing and canoodling and making all these cute little sounds, and it's like it's adorable. At some point though, it's like, guys, like it's enough. We get it.
Close the
And
door.
they do
Close
this
the
for
door.
life. And it's every like 6 weeks or so between their, little egg laying periods. They have their honeymoon phase, and they do it over and over and over, and they're so happy just to be together, and they sit right next to each other, and it's amazing. It's
So is
really
this
amazing.
it sounds like it qualifies as a basic need for a pigeon, that it having that connection, having that intimacy. And so they get food, if you adopt a pigeon, I would imagine, you provide food and safety and shelter, and then they choose you to be their snuggle person, right? I mean, do they
I
really
would
do
I
that?
would definitely agree with that. And some pigeons aren't gonna bond with a person in that way. It kind of depends on the pigeon, and sometimes it's best to find your pigeon a pigeon mate. Um, and if there's like an aviary with different sexes of pigeons, they will very readily find their own mates. And there are homosexual pigeons. It's kind of common. Like I've known a lot of people that had gay pigeons. And I mean it's funny to call them gay. They're a bonded pair, but they do all the same behaviors. The females will lay eggs together, the males will sit on fake eggs together. Um, but I would totally agree with you that that's an essential need for a pigeon. Absolutely. Like a sense of connection and like intimacy with someone that's like their person or their bonded mate. And I think Pickles thinks of me more as like a mom because I feed him. It's like not romantic. But he does have a stuffed purple shark in his house that he likes to build a nest for and cuddle with. So I think
Wow.
that's his wife.
That's funny. So do you think Pickles and Pew would bond, or has he already bonded with the shark?
One of the things about Pickles is that he doesn't know he's a pigeon. He doesn't understand that he's a pigeon. And when he sees other pigeons, he's like, I don't know what the heck that is, but I don't like it. And and he will probably never have like a normal bond with another pigeon because of that. And that's one of the reasons he has to be kept as a pet. Normally, I would never advocate for keeping wildlife as pets. It's like part of my job at the wildlife center is to tell people not to do that. but pigeons are a weird gray area. No pun intended, or maybe pun intended. Um, because they are technically feral. They're technically not really wild. They're living in the wild, but they are domestic animals and they can be um adapted to being pets even once they've been wild. It depends on the bird, but Pickles did come, he was a patient there, and one of the reasons we realized we couldn't release him, other than the fact that he can't eat. See, we figured that would actually fix itself. It hasn't. But he wanted to sit on people's shoulders. He wanted to make little lovey-dovey sounds at people and other pigeons. He's like, I don't like that. It's like those guys are weird. And I've gotten to know a bajillion pigeons over the last few years, and some of them are very much a pigeon's pigeon, but you get the people pigeons too, and he's one of those.
That's interesting. I've learned a lot. I mean, I'm an animal person, but it's one of those things that they sort of defy. And while we were talking, there's a flock of sparrows out the window, and one of them just ran into the window, and I'm looking at
Oh
these
no.
birds, and I'm thinking about pigeons, and I'm like, they sort of defy everything you intuitively know about a bird, right?
Yeah.
And so what would you say to somebody who finds a pigeon, who lives in an urban environment or a suburban or an area where there are pigeons that are feral, but in the city? What would you say that they should do if they A, want a pigeon, or B, see one? How do they know if the pigeon needs help?
Usually if a pigeon is just alone, that's a red flag. It doesn't necessarily, I mean, sometimes they're just hanging out alone because there's a good spot of sun or something. But they're so flock oriented that one pigeon just sitting somewhere alone is kind of like, that's something that'll make me cross the street and walk over and just. And even in all wildlife rescue, one of the things, it's like a little litmus test, like walk up to the animal and see what they do. Does it fly away? Does it walk off? Does it, what happens when you walk up to this animal? If you walk up and the pigeon doesn't get up and fly away, you got yourself a rescue situation. And that's true for most wildlife, actually. And sometimes if they are injured or something and they can still get up and fly away, it's like, well, maybe they're okay too. Like, so it's always it depends thing, but a lone pigeon is usually a red flag, and any pigeon that doesn't run away from you. Because again, you do look like a predator. They're not going to go, oh, this guy's here to save me. We, as much as they are like us in a lot of ways, we also can't anthropomorphize them and act like they don't see us as a threat when they're especially wild living pigeons who aren't used to people being nice to them. And there are a million reasons pigeons need rescue, and it's not just feral pigeons. It's very often domestic pigeons that are released for a million different reasons. King pigeons, big white ones, big chunky white ones, are bred for meat, just like chickens, and sold in meat markets when they're 5 or 6 weeks old. Those guys are released all the time. If you see a big chunky white king pigeon just standing there alone, he needs to be rescued. He's not wild. He can't live in the wild. Any kind of fancy pigeon that just, if you see a pigeon that doesn't look like the pigeons you usually see, that's a red flag. If they have a band around their ankle, they're probably a racing pigeon that has gotten lost or injured. Any kind of wing dragging or not flying is a red flag. But I always want people to look for, a pigeon-friendly rehabber or wildlife center when it's possible, because there are hundreds of pigeons that need rescue already and are in rescues and sanctuaries, of course, depending on your location. But there's Great Lakes Pigeon Rescue is like in Chicago. Palomacy is here in the Bay Area, but we kind of have a network of people all over. There are tons and tons of pigeons, maybe thousands, who are waiting for adoptive homes. So there's no need to go out on the street and yoink a pigeon and take him to your house. He's going to hate you anyway, probably, and he probably has a mate, that he wants to go back to. So if you want to rescue pigeons, That's amazing. It's people can get involved from anywhere, especially if you want to join Palomacy and be like, hey, I'm the guy in such and such a city who can go out and rescue pigeons. Please, that's amazing. And if you want to adopt a pigeon, look for adoptable pigeons first who need homes, because our foster homes are just like to the brim right now. And we're not, there's not enough new people, but there's always, always, always pigeons coming in. It's like trying to catch Niagara Falls in a teacup. So anyone who wants to get involved with pigeon rescue, we need you. But don't just go and take a pigeon off the street and say, this is my pigeon now. Because, he deserves the life that was already his life. And at the same time, if you rescue a pigeon and there's not a good resource nearby, keeping them as a pet is totally legal and it's totally safe, health-wise for, you and your family. They're not going to bring in some crazy disease to your dogs and cats or your children or anything like that. And a lot of that kind of talk is scare tactic, kind of, almost like old wives' tale at this point.
Well, this is fascinating. We could go on, but we're about to run out of time, Robin.
I could go
No,
on
I've
and on.
learned a lot. I mean, I'm an animal person.
No,
And
we want you to go on and on. I mean, this is one of those things where people just don't know. They've been fed this assumption, that first that they're a nuisance, they're dirty, they're disease ridden, and they just live with that assumption. And here that's not true. They're smart. I mean, I can see from watching you, they're affectionate. There is a connection there, and it's just amazing.
I will say, though, they are dirty when they poop in your hair. I was walking down the street in southern France years ago, and I had one poop in my hair, and that's not the same thing as we're talking about here. That one I wish had been wearing pants.
No,
Yeah.
that
You know
in the
what?
pigeon
To be
world,
fair,
that's a term of endearment, Robin. So you need to feel
I was so
that, and
embarrassed.
that requires such accuracy. So it wasn't an accident. It was
Right.
not
I
an
feel
accident.
loved by this pigeon, right? I had to find, it's funny. It was a lot of years ago, over 30. But I was in this small area, did a semester abroad in France, and it was a small town. And I had to find, it's different culturally, especially then. There weren't, mini marts on the corner. And I found a McDonald's in like the side in one of the street shopping areas, and I darted into the bathroom and stuck my head under the sink trying to like clean it because I didn't want to show up, at a cafe with pigeon poop in my hair. But anyway, that's just a different story. But
hey, if anyone pooped in your hair, it would be gross. So it's not just pigeons. Like, let's be real.
You're right there. That is true. That from this country girl's experience in the city, that's my most memorable urban pigeon experience is, and my hair was long and longer than it is now. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And anyway, we got it fixed, but that's the only time I've had pigeons go in my hair, but they are relatively clean when I've seen. So it's just funny. I had
Dion, it's been a true pleasure. And if I got a cat and 2 or 3 dogs, and I don't know whether I could integrate a pigeon in here, but it certainly is tempting just hearing you talk about them and watching you and the pigeons interact together. It's something special. Robin, any last thoughts?
No, likewise, Steve. It really makes me want a pigeon, although I better not tell my daughter because she's an animal collector. I mean, we have all the chickens that lay eggs, and she's made friends with all of them. She loves them. She wants a parakeet, and maybe if she insists, I will continue. I don't know if the pigeon would survive in our house either with the cats and the dogs, but it definitely has me thinking. So if people want to get a hold of you or the Palomacy in general, how do they do that?
So Palomacy is real easy to find. It's just pigeonrescue.org, and there's tons of resources on there, articles about what to do if you find a hurt pigeon. There's a map of who to contact. It's like an interactive Google map of rescues that, and vets and other people who are pigeon friendly. Our Facebook group, there's two groups. There's the adoption group and a help group. It's the Palomacy help group for pigeon and dove adoptions. And the link again is on pigeonrescue.org. So if you can remember pigeonrescue.org, or if you type in Palomacy, you're good. I have a little website, benicetopigeons.org, and you can find links to things there as well. And I have little stickers that I make that say "Be nice to pigeons" if you want to put them around your city or town or on your laptop or something. It's just, it's just this simple idea. Just be nice to them. You don't even have to adopt them or help them or rescue them. Just give them, a second thought and challenge what you've been told or what you've heard from other people, and think about, why are they here, and what should we do to just make sure we're doing the right thing. But pigeonrescue.org is that's your go-to place. You can find us all.
So lastly, we never talked much about this, but I'm assuming Palomacy is a nonprofit and works with
Yes.
donations or helpers, or if people, did they go to pigeonrescue.org if somebody wants to help or donate or give to helping pigeons?
Yep, there's I think Pickles is on the donation button on there. So when you see Pickles, it'll say donate, I believe. And so click on that and you can donate. It's the whole organization is, volunteer powered and run on just like love and donations, and I don't know how we do it because there are so many that need help every day, but it's all volunteers and people who care and people who want to help financially, so that because AV and vet medical care is real expensive, and a lot of the pigeons we get have been grabbed by hawks or hit by cars or all kinds of horrible things you don't even want to think about. And it gets expensive, and the donations are hugely important.
So give us a little idea. We'll wrap it up, but give everyone a little idea of the scale. Like, how big is Palomacy? How many volunteers? How many? It's why, you connect nationwide, but the organization in the San Francisco area itself has grown really a lot over the years, right? And so
Yeah. I think our help group on Facebook now has like 30,000 people in it, last we checked. And I don't know how many official volunteers we have, because it's not like something you sign up for. It's like it's a little like joining a cult. You don't even know it when it's happening, and then you're in.
You've been pigeonized.
It really is like that. Look, I didn't know it was happening when it was happening. But it's you never sign a form like, "Hi, I'm a volunteer." But we have such a cool network of people, and you reach out and go, "Hey, do we know anybody out in Stockton?" It's like the Central Valley. There's not a lot of resources out there, and you go, "I'm gonna text my friend who lives out there who helps animals, and she knows someone who knows someone." So it's very it's hard to like quantify it, if
So
that
real
makes sense.
grassroots effort.
Oh, absolutely.
That's
That's
really
really
cool.
amazing.
It sounds like it's a unique model, really,
It
for
is. I feel like
rescue.
it grew organically, and I don't want to speak for Elizabeth, but I really feel like no one knew what it was going to be like when it got started. And it's just become this amazing, weird, cool thing that just couldn't exist without a bunch of people who really care and just want to make a positive difference in the world. And there's like a million ways to make a positive difference, but this is a way that not a lot of people are doing it. So it feels like a need that is somehow being fulfilled in the world.
That's
Well,
really cool. And in the process, you probably meet and connect with a lot of great people.
Yeah. It's definitely a lot of really interesting misfits and oddball people. Like, I say that with love because I'm one of them. And the animal rescue people we're all like just a little crazy, and that's fine. But like you have to be going downtown to like look for a pigeon in a corner that someone told you about 3 hours ago or something. And how many times I've walked up and down the streets of Chinatown looking under cars at night in a rainstorm or something. And it's like people are going, what is this crazy lady doing? You have to be willing to look a little crazy. So we're all there. But I don't know why we all stick with doing it, but it feels like we're doing something. I don't know if it's something new, but it's something necessary.
Well, it really sounds like a selfless act of love that gives, joy just in the act of doing it. And so kudos to you and the whole organization. The world needs more people with hearts like yours. That's for sure. And this must be Pickles.
This is Pickles.
Hi, Pickles.
Look at Pickles.
And they even have a heart on their beak.
Yeah, isn't it the cutest thing? That's their little seer. And they all have very unique seers. Pickles' little seer is one of my favorite things about him.
That's cool. Well, Dion, it's been a pleasure. Definitely.
It's been really nice talking to you guys. Really nice to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Our pleasure.
And Pickles and Pew.
Oh yes, Pickles and Pew. That they were the stars of the show, even though you're like their spokesperson.
Yeah,
So
yeah. They don't.
You're the agent for the pigeon.
They don't have time for this. They're really busy.
Yeah. They got to go bask.
Exactly.
It's very important to bask.
Yeah,
Right.
Pickles is building his nest right now, and it's paper strips, and they have to be cardstock, and they have to be white, and it's a whole thing. So
I understand.
he's really busy.
I am a pigeon. You've convinced me. Robin,
believe it.
it's always fun. Who knows where we're going to go from here, but it's going to be great. I assure you, Dion, I wish you many pigeons and pleasant days.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much. So nice talking to you. Thanks
And
for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us again for a view from the summit. We'll be back next week. And who knows what kind of bird brain ideas we'll come up with. We'll see you then. Take care.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
This program is made possible by Summit Animal Health. If you have a dog, cat, or horse with mobility issues, Summit Animal Health has the all-natural, drug-free solution that comes with a satisfaction guarantee. Summit Animal Health products are used by Olympic gold medal equestrians, leading rodeo stars, professional dog trainers and handlers, and people just like you. Whether working companion or couch potato, Summit Animal Health can keep them moving. Check them out online at summitanimals.com. New to Summit? Use the code VIEW15 and receive 15% off your initial order. We'll see you next week for another View from the Summit.